But I'm coming from the book of John, chapter 11. And this is about the death of Lazarus. This is what God led me to. And we're going to start at the first verse, and the Bible reads, "Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, behold, he who you love is sick. When Jesus heard that, he said, For this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it." I'm going to use for a topic today that Jesus is a true friend. Look at your neighbor and say, Jesus is a true friend. Now, if you really pay attention to what the Bible is saying right there in the fourth verse, where it said, "This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it." No matter what we sometimes go through in our life, we got to understand, no matter what, in all things, God will and is going to get the glory. What we sometimes go through in our life, sickness in our body, don't know which way to go, heartache and pain, we don't see an end to this. But at the end of this, God always gets the glory. So no matter what you're going through in your life, just remember, this trouble don't last always. It got to get better. Whatever my situation is, there's nothing too hard for God. I know it's gonna get better. It's got to get better. Sickness in your body, it's got to get better. It may look like it's bad right now, and it may look like I'm hurting right now, and it look like something may have got rid of something one time, but it came back. But let me tell you something, the same God that got rid of it the first time and got the glory can get rid of it the second time and also going to get the glory. I don't care what you're going through. I didn't come to play today. Bible goes down a little bit further, and it said, I want y'all to remember something. Also, when they told Jesus that Lazarus was sick, Jesus was not in the same town where they was. He literally stayed a couple more days after where he was. Lazarus had already been dead for 4 days, the time that Jesus got there. Now I want to read this part that really stuck out to me, and it said that. Then his disciples, we're going to go on down a little bit. The Bible says that the disciples said to him, Rabbi, lately the Jews sought to stone you. Are you going to go there again? Jesus answered and said, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day and he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if one walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. It also reads these things he said, and after that he said to our friend Lazarus, sleep. But I go that I may wake him. Now you got to remember, when he said this, they thought that he was saying that Lazarus was sleeping. Because they told him, they said, well, if Lazarus is asleep, if you sleep, we know we sometimes get the feeling better. Sickness in our body, sooner or later we go. But Jesus eventually came out and said, he came plainly and said, Lazarus is dead, and I'm glad for your sake that I was not there, that you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go to him. So many times God do things in our life, and you got people in the world that think that whatever, if they healed in their body, they feel like it's because of the doctors. They feel sometimes, if I get a job, the job you've been praying all your life for, they think it's only because you was qualified. How many of you know there's plenty of people that have got jobs that weren't even qualified for the job? So I don't care whatever you do in your life, always remember you can do all things through Christ that strengthen you. We got to learn that we got to keep God first in all things. The reason we want to keep God first in all things, because you can try to do things on your own, which I've done so many times, but it ain't going to work out for you. A lot of times we do things under the will of God and ain't prayed about it, and it's only going to be temporarily. But whenever you do something in the will of God, God is not going to give you something that's going to be temporarily, but he's going to give you something that's going to be here for a lifetime. So he said, I'm glad for your sake that I was not there. Because I truly believe if Jesus would have been there when Lazarus was sick, he never would have died. But he knew it's some people that don't believe that Jesus going to show you, I am that guy. I don't care whatever you say. If I have to prove myself to you, I'm going to prove myself to you. So what he said over in the 20th verse, we're going to go over. It said, then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him. But Mary was sitting in the house. Now Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if your brother, if you would have been here, my brother would have not died. But let's go back over to the 15th verse when he said, I am glad for your sake that I was not there, that you may believe. But he was talking to his disciples when he was talking about this. And he was talking about the people, because you got to remember one thing about Jesus. If you never want God to have to get our attention, because a lot of times when God has to get our attention, it don't be the way that we want it. I've always told God, I said, God, if you're going to get my attention, please get my attention in a way that it don't be harmful. Get my way God, get my attention away in another way where it don't be so deadly and I be put in a hospital for a couple of days. I said, God, do whatever you got to do to get my attention. Now, the things that I really love the most about this, Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again at resurrection day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. See, if we learn that if we turn everything over to God, turn all these it's time out to come out of these devilment ways. You know, a lot of times we do things under the cover, which I've done so many times in our life, and think don't nobody see us. But how do you know God see all things? And he sees all things. And you got to think about something. If God catches us in our mess, if you die in sin, you're going to rise a sinner. It's time to come out of those wicked ways. But Jesus said, I am the resurrection. And he said, whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? One thing about God that I truly think about him so much is that he's so faithful. And the things that we've done in our life, I want to tell y'all this. I remember, because I'm very honest when it comes to my life, I remember I used to have a masturbation problem. I used to watch pornography all the time. And I had a buddy that I talked to one time, and I told him the addiction that I have. He said, Robert, he said, man, I could never in my life do that. He said, the reason I couldn't do that, he said, can you imagine whenever you're doing what you're doing in the masturbation, look who's looking down on you. We got to think, and I never thought about that. So whenever we get in our mess or get in our self, and we feel like because sometimes we move off emotions. I've moved off emotions a lot of times in my life. And through all of the things that I've done in my life, he never gave up on me. Never gave up on me. I'm telling y'all, it's so important when he said that I am the resurrection. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. You got so many people in the world today thinking they living right, thinking they living safe, and got hell all in them. Don't even understand they on their way to hell. It's coming a time, y'all, that we living in a day where we got to learn, we got to turn from those things that's not of God. The easiest way to be able to follow God, I always say, whenever you finna do something you know ain't in the will of God, ask yourself, what would Jesus do? And if you know that Jesus wouldn't do this thing, you need to turn away from your wicked ways. It's so many times in our life, like I said, we move off emotions. We sometimes want to do things because of the way that we feel in that moment. But think about it. What if one of us was God? We would have given up on each other a long time ago. But because of his grace that he give us each and every day, time is winding up. And I told myself, ain't nothing on this earth worth dying going to hell over. I said, ain't nothing on this earth worth dying going to hell over. It's time to turn away from our wicked ways. But then I'm sorry to get off that package, but then we're going to go over to, I'm trying to make this thing very quick. We're going to go to where he said, where he goes out and he said, Jesus is getting ready to raise Lazarus from the dead. See, Jesus already knew what he was getting ready to do before he was going to do it. But the thing about it was he had to prove himself to these people and show who he is. We got to remember that. So when we go down a little bit, because a lot of this I don't even write down because I always like for God to use me in the moment. So he said that Mary also went to Jesus, and she fell down at his feet saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would have not died. Now remember, Martha said the same thing. Now therefore, when Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who came with her weeping, he groaned in his spirit and was troubled. See, Jesus had feelings. A lot of times Jesus go to his Father to give us grace. He asked God to give us mercy because he loves us yet that much. And why in the world would we not want to serve a man who is able to do exceedingly above all that we can ever ask or think? Why would the world we want to play with our life? See, when we out in the world doing this and doing that, we're playing with our life. The reason we're playing with our life is because if God was to catch us in our mess, we know where we're going. Now, if you know better, you do better. So if you was to do this thing, you're going to die and go to hell. Why in the world are we going to continue doing the same thing over and over and over and over? It becomes a cycle. But we got to remember who Jesus really is, and he's proven in himself. So then he said, then Jesus again groaning in himself came to the tomb. And it was at the cave and a stone laying against him. Jesus said to them, now they at the tomb now getting ready to raise Lazarus from the dead. He said, take away the stone. Martha, the sister of him who was dead, said to him, Lord, by this time there is a stench, for he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, did I not say to you, if you will believe, you will see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead man was laying, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. And I know that you always hear me, but because of the people who are standing by, I said this, that they may believe that you sent me. Now he's showing people who he really is. And you got to remember, like I said, Jesus never does anything without going to his Father first. Now, when he heard this, he said these things. He cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he who had died came bound hand and foot with a grave clothes, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, loose him and let him go. You got to remember back then when they was buried when they buried them, they was buried like mummies. So when they came up out of the grave, they had to be cut. So I come to tell each and every one of you all today, and I'm done. I come to tell each and every one of you all today that no matter what you do in your life, keep God first. Whatever mistake that you've made in your life, ask God for forgiveness. Because if you read this package, it was so important to me and it meant so much to me because that lets me know all the power that God and Jesus have. So if you remember one thing about your life, if you look back over your life and you see that I could have been dead a long time ago, he's given you grace. He's given you power. He's given you everything that you need to be able to overcome the enemy. So why in the world are we going to play with our life when he said, I come that you may have life and have it more abundantly? He's showing you who he really is. Now, I know this is my first message, and this is what Jesus gave. And it may not be the best to everybody, but it stuck out to me because of what he done to Lazarus. What he done to him, he will do the same thing for you. Just remember, no matter what you're going through, no situation is too hard for God. You don't never have to leave the same way that you came. Everybody stand to their feet. I gotta do this because I'm finna get up out the way. There are a lot of people in here, and I'm gonna tell y'all, God have really been dealing with me about a lot of different things. But a lot of people are carrying hurt that they've been carrying for years. And don't understand, if I was to give this all to God, he can take this pain away. Nobody is here by mistake. It's a reason you're here. But I'm telling y'all today, it's time to get up out of these sinful ways. None of us are perfect. All of us make mistakes. But God wants to heal you today. He wants to heal you of your broken hearted. He wants to take that pain away, unforgiveness. If you know that if it's okay, girl, if you know that you are dealing with that, come to the altar. Don't worry about who next to you. If you're dealing with sickness in your body, you don't have to leave the same way that you came. Be free. Because the enemy will keep these things in your mind just to keep you in bondage. The enemy will keep these things in your mind to not give you peace, to not give you rest. But if you are dealing with any of those things today, come to the altar. Don't be